Hey up everyone, hope we're all doing well. I'm going to tell you who would win a fight between the current champion of every single weight division in the UFC against the division GOAT. Now I did this a year ago, but guess what? Times have changed and champions have also changed, which means there's some new fresh matchups that we can go over. So that's what we're going to do in this video. But now I'm going to stop wasting your time and get straight into it. Okay, so starting things off, we have the Flyweight division where it will be the current UFC champion, Alexander Pantoja, taking on the UFC Flyweight GOAT, Demetrius Johnson. And it's actually a shame because we could have got this fight. Pantoja called out Demetrius Johnson, I think, what was it, in December after he beat Kaya Sakura. And DJ was like, you know what? No, I'm a pensioner. I'm too old for this shit, which is fair enough. But how would this fight play out? Guys, I think it'll be very competitive, very compelling. I think it'll be action-packed. I think it'll be consistently, there'll be a lot of output. It'll be high volume. But I do think that the GOAT of the Flyweight division, Demetrius Johnson, would come out victorious. I think this will be very competitive. Both fighters are elite. Both fighters are very well-rounded. Both of them can strike, grapple, good cardio. Ultimately, DJ would always be one step ahead. I think he's a much better striker, much cleaner striker. I'm not saying that Pantoja is a bad striker, but that's definitely his weakest area, in my opinion. And when it comes to the grappling, Pantoja is a great grappler, but I think DJ will be able to, handle the grappling of Pantoja and the pace of Pantoja. Not only that, I think DJ has a much better fight IQ than Pantoja. He's got one of the best fight IQs I've ever seen. So I've got to say DJ would win this one. The probability of this one, I would give it like 70% in favor of Demetrius Johnson and 30% for Pantoja. I think it'll be very competitive. And if Pantoja was able to win this one, I wouldn't be surprised. I think he's definitely could be capable of winning this one. I think it'll be very close. But ultimately, I think DJ will get his hand raised. Now moving on, we have the Bantamweight division where we have the current champion Merab Dvalishvili taking on the Bantamweight GOAT Merab Dvalishvili. Now how would this one play out? Now obviously, given that Merab is the GOAT of the Bantamweight division and the champion, kind of just got a knocky to the person who's ranked second place, which I would say is Dominic Cruz. And how would this one go? Yeah, I think Merab absolutely mauls Dominic Cruz. I'm going to give this like a 85% in favor of Merab and 15% for Dominic Cruz. Now listen, I love Dominic Cruz, but I just think Merab's just going to take him down and keep him there. Even though Dominic Cruz is quite good at scrambling, he's got tricky footwork, he lands some sneaky shots on you because he's so unorthodox. But I don't really care. I think Merab just relentless pressure, and I think the takedown threat would open up some shots for Merab as well. I don't think he would necessarily hurt Dominic Cruz, but I do think he would get a lot of takedowns on Dominic Cruz. And if Dominic Cruz was able to stuff a few takedowns, well, we saw what happened with Piotr Yan when he did that against Merab. Merab just didn't fucking stop. Therefore, I think Merab would absolutely dominate Dominic Cruz. He would dominate the Dominator, and I'm going to say like a 50-45 for Merab. I think it would be light work for Merab. But now we move on to the Featherweight division, and we get ourselves back in the same pickle as we did in the Bantamweight division, because the current champion is Volkanovski, and who's the GOAT to the Featherweight division? Also Volkanovski. So who are we gonna give him to next? It's gonna be Jose Aldo. Now some of you may say, oh, it's Max Holloway. Okay, fair enough, but guess what, guys? I think Volkanovski, well, we've seen it. Volkanovski beats Aldo, and he beats Max Holloway. He's done it 3 times against Max Holloway, and he's already done it against Aldo. Now, if this was a prime Aldo, I still think the outcome is the exact same. Maybe it's just a bit more competitive because, you know, when he fought Aldo, his longevity, you know, he wasn't at the best of his times. And Max Holloway, we've seen him beat a prime Max Holloway 3 times, so we know how it plays out. But a prime Aldo, I think Aldo may do a bit better. You know, Volk did a great job of mixing things in, but I feel like that's what really caught Aldo. Like, he couldn't do anything about how well Volkanovski was mixing everything up. And Volkanovski is the champion. Even at this latest stage, not even a prime Volk, I still think this later stage current Volk would beat a prime Aldo. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't think this current stage Volkanovski would also beat a prime Max Holloway, as we've seen 3 times already. We've seen these matchups. Unfortunately, nothing new. We all know how this one goes. 100% probability for Volk in both matchups with Aldo and Max Holloway. Right, now we get to the one what's my favorite one to talk about, because I find this really interesting. The current UFC lightweight champion Ilia Topuria taking on the UFC lightweight GOAT Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now, maybe some of you would argue it's Islam Makhachev. Me personally, I still think that it is Khabib. Now, how would this fight play out? I'm gonna say 60. I think that Khabib would get it done. I'm gonna give a probability of 60% in favor of Khabib and 40% in favor of Ilia Topuria. Now, the reason reason why, I'll be much more confident if I've seen Ilya at 155 a load of times. We've seen him twice against Jai Herbert, and obviously when he just knocked out Charles Oliveira, it made a great statement. But I saw Khabib at 155 so many times. I saw him dominate so many times. I feel like I've got to go with Khabib on this one. I feel like he was quite big and quite dense as well for 155. The same way Ilya is quite big and quite dense for 155. But I do think Khabib wouldn't... I think he would show respect, but at the same time, he does it very intelligently, like how he did against Poirier and Justin Gaethje, where he'll be able to take you down. He'll shoot early. He won't waste any time. He'll get you down, and if he doesn't get you down, well, I think he does get you down. Even if you do a great job of defending, he's gonna tire you out. And how would he win this one? Maybe a submission victory. Yeah, maybe a submission victory or a decision. It could be quite competitive, maybe a 49-46 where Ilya takes one of the rounds. Obviously, I love Ilya Topuria. I would love to favor Ilya Topuria, but I do think Khabib would win this one. Now, Ilya will be able to trouble Khabib with his boxing. We've seen people have success in the boxing department against Khabib before. We saw Dustin Poirier land a couple shots, Michael Johnson, Conor McGregor, even Justin Gaethje was doing great with leg kicks. I do think Ilya Topuria will be able to have some success on the feet and maybe even hurt Khabib, like again we have seen before. But ultimately, I do think Khabib would take this one. I haven't seen enough of Ilya Topuria's ground game in order to say he would do great against someone like Khabib, in my opinion, who was so dominant when it came to the grappling side of things. Maybe in like a year's time, if Ilya Topuria is still champ and we've seen him in there against an Arman Sarukian, Paddy the Baddy, who have some grappling credentials and are strong guys and big guys for 155, and we see a bit more of the grappling showed off by Ilya at 155, then maybe the outcome's a bit different. The probabilities for both guys change a bit more, but as of right now, I think Khabib will get the victory over Ilya Topuria by either a late submission or a decision. And the fun doesn't stop there, lads, because we have another banger. We have the welterweight division where the current champion is JDM, and he, of course, will be taking on GSP. Both guys known for 3 letters. What a lovely fight this would be. Now, I'm going to go out there and say it. I think GSP would win this one, but I do also believe that JDM's just got one of those styles what's always going to be a fucking nightmare. You have those fighters who are just hard fights for every single fight, no matter what style it is. They just have the right, and I just think that JDM has one of those styles. He's a good anti-grappler, he can defend takedowns, and he's got very good boxing, of course. His boxing is insane, going to the head of body, very good combination punching, got some good power on the end of his shots, and not only that, he's very accurate as well, and some good shot selection as well. But GSP, for me, he's so great at mixing it in. His fight IQ's insane. I do think he'll be able to get JDM down, and even if you can't hold JDM down for too long, I do think he'll be quite wise enough on the feet to not get, you know, constantly peppered like Bilal was doing, whatever that approach was from Bilal. Game planning wise, I think GSP knows what he's doing. He's very good at tactics and game planning. I think he'll get some good corner advice as well. I think GSP will be able to win this one. I do think JDM would be able to possibly hurt and have a lot of moments on the feet, but I think when GSP starts mixing everything in, that's when JDM maybe starts to be a bit more hesitant because he's scared of the takedown attempts and whatnot. I don't think GSP would do what Bilal did and waited way too long until he started shooting takedowns. I think GSP would be quite, you know, in the first round, within like the first 2 minutes, I think GSP would initiate some sort of grappling, you know, initiating the clinch as well. And I do think that GSP will be able to get like a 49, maybe 48, 47 decision over JDM. The probability of this, I feel like 70-30 in GSP's favor, maybe 80-20 as well. I feel like GSP would show how great he really is against someone like JDM, even though JDM could definitely win this fight as well and make it a very difficult fight. And now we move on to the middleweight division, where we have a matchup that we had last year, which is Dricus du Plessis taking on Anderson the Spider Silva. Now, how would this one play out? I think that Dricus will be able to beat Anderson Silva. I think Anderson Silva could have some moments, but ultimately, I just think that Dricus is one of those who can mix it in really well. And Anderson Silva, he didn't do the best against offensive grapplers. We saw Chael Sonnen have a lot of success against Anderson Silva, and I think Dricus du Plessis, a big middleweight, will be able to have a lot of success in the grappling department against Anderson Silva. I also think he'll be able to have some success on the feet against Anderson Silva as well, with his striking and his unorthodox striking and his power. He's a massive powerhouse. But Anderson Silva, I think he'll be able to hurt Dricus du Plessis on the feet. Anderson Silva, although very technical, he was also quite unpredictable and unorthodox as well. But I also feel like the plot armor does take a place in this one. The probability of this one, I would give it like, I don't know, Dricus du Plessis like a 65-35 in his favor, maybe 70-30, somewhere around there. I do think Anderson could have his moments, but ultimately, I feel like Dricus, he has got underrated fight IQ. I feel like he'll be able to control this fight, and I feel like whoever controls this fight would be the winner, and I think there's more chance of Dricus controlling this fight compared to Anderson Silva, especially with Dricus mixing it all up and just being such a strong guy, I think he would have this one in the bag. I'm going to go with like a late submission or a late ground and pound or a decision. I think I'm going to go with a late finish, either ground and pound finish or a submission victory in like the third round, later on in the third round. Now we move on to the light heavyweight division, and we have the current champion Magomed Ankalaev taking on the light heavyweight GOAT. We all know who it is, Jon Jones. How would this one play out? You've got to remember, this isn't like the Jon Jones who was going, you know, the distance with Thiago Santos and Dominic Reyes and Anthony Smith. This is a prime Jon Jones. How would Magomed Ankalaev match up? I think Ankalaev could have a lot of success against a prime Jon Jones, but ultimately I think that Jon Jones does win this one. I've got to be completely honest. His fight IQ is amazing, and Ankalaev, I feel like his fight IQ, I'm not completely sold on it. Nothing Ankalaev's done has really wowed me, although I do believe he is a great talent. You know, he's got his grappling, he's got good striking, but ultimately I just think Jones, his striking's better, his grappling's better, his defense is really underrated. He's got a great chin, his fight IQ's insane. He had great cardio. I really think that Jon Jones will be able to get a wide decision against Ankalaev. I could see Ankalaev maybe making it competitive at points, but ultimately I just think Jon Jones, he's just too smart for someone like Ankalaev, and I think he'll be able to get a wide decision, maybe like a 49-46, if not a 50-45. The probability on this one, I'm going to give it like 85%, 90% for Jon Jones for this one. I really do struggle to see how Ankalaev will be able to beat Jon Jones. I feel like if Ankalaev was able to get some momentum going and start having some success, then I just feel like Jones would end up being like, we'll be able to adapt throughout the fight to prevent for Ankalaev having any more success with what he's been able to find success with. So overall, I think that Jon Jones will either get a late finish or a very wide scorecard decision. And last but not least, we have the heavyweight division, where we have the current UFC heavyweight champion Tom Aspinall, no longer Jon Jones, and he will be taking on a prime Stipe Miocic. How would this fight play out? Now, I actually think this fight is quite close. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I think prime Stipe is relatively underrated in my opinion. He had very, very good boxing, fast hands, very precise for a heavyweight. Not only that, he was like one of the leaner heavyweights, which obviously helps considering most heavyweights are just big fatties. And not only that, he was also a very good grappler as well. And obviously you got Aspinall, who's got dynamite in his hands. He's very fast. He's looking great at the moment. He's also got a background in grappling as well when it comes to his jiu-jitsu. This is a hard one in my opinion when you think about it more. I think I'm going to go with Tom Aspinall, but genuinely I think this might be a 50-50 matchup. I genuinely think so. Maybe 55-45 in Tom Aspinall's favor when it comes to probability, mainly because I feel like the speed, and I do feel like he'll be able to find the chin of Stipe. The reason why I think it's quite close, because I also think Stipe will be able to find the chin of Aspinall. We know that Aspinall keeps his chin up in the air a bit. I feel like he showed it's a bit better against Curtis Blades, although that fight didn't last that long at all, so I can't really say. But going off from what we saw, I do feel like Stipe will be able to find the chin possibly of Tom Aspinall, but I do think Aspinall would take this. I do think he'll try mixing his grappling here and there, and I do think he'll be able to find the chin quite early on of Stipe Miocic and getting like a second round knockout. I think Stipe will maybe get hurt in the first round, weather the storm, and then going into the second round, I really think that Tom Aspinall will be able to finish the job and find that chin of Stipe Miocic and put him out cold. But I aren't stupid. I know that Stipe also has a great chance in this fight. Maybe you guys wouldn't agree, but I personally think Stipe would have a very decent chance in this fight against Tom Aspinall. But what do you guys think about this? Who do you think would win out of all these different weight divisions with the current champions and the division GOATs? Let me know in the comments. Let me know if you agree or disagree and how you think some fights will play out. Whether you agree whether I was right on certain divisions with the correct GOATs or not. Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one, and like and subscribe.